Can you see me?
Hi, yes. Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for
Sorry.
joining.
Shuffle back a bit. Yeah. How are you on this fine day inside?
Uh, Pretty good. Today has been a crazy day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was super late to my 12 p.m. EST um, live. And so, yeah, I was just like running from meeting to meeting. I just had lunch. I ordered pizza.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah.
Yeah,
How
it's
about you?
crazy. Busy as well. It's crazy how busy you can be when you don't like leave the house. But, you know, work doesn't sleep even when we're all stuck inside.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. I wanted to mention this. I was talking to my sister. So my sister, she works in PR at L'Oreal, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be chatting with someone from The Cut from New York Magazine. Her name is Anna Silman. Yeah, like I'm so cool, And she was like, Anna Silman? I think I worked with her. So
Oh,
yeah, I think you guys worked together when you interviewed Ryan Reynolds for,
oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, I feel like I've had so many different lives as a writer. Like, I've interviewed Ryan Reynolds, and now I'm writing about healthcare. So it's
Yeah.
like so many different incarnations. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. So it was so weird. I was like, oh, well, now I don't feel so special. Like, my sister's like, yeah, I know Anna.
I'm very flattered to be thought of as someone worth knowing.
So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get started. People are going to be joining in and out. They're going to maybe ask questions, and it's kind of the nature of us just chatting through some of the questions that I prepared. But if people have anything to ask, then they'll jump in and ask on the
Cool.
chat. So yeah, just wanted to welcome you to the Corporate Diary. So the Corporate Diary is a video series and a blog where I interview women in male-dominated fields, and I talk about what it's really like to be them in their respective fields. Usually it's more corporate related or more business related, but I felt like it was super interesting to see your background when it comes to publishing and media. I mean, you guys are at the forefront of culture, and really I couldn't find the right word, so maybe you can help me with that. But it's almost like your role in society is to write the history of what we're going to be looking at in a few decades from now. So we're living in interesting times, and you working at The Cut and New York Magazine, those are two very interesting spaces, and I'd say publishers where the modern day female voice is very well depicted. And so as a senior writer, I'd love to get your perspective as to what does publishing really look like? Is it male dominated? Is it not? Who kind of has certain roles? Are there certain, I guess, personas that from a psychological perspective or a personification perspective own certain spaces?
I think that, I mean, like a lot of industries, there still is an imbalance. Like you have, for example, a lot of women writing for magazines or in editor jobs, and yet the top of a lot of mastheads, so sort of the editor-in-chief, those roles often are to men, white men. But I do think that the industry has done a better job than some of being inclusive. I feel really lucky to work at The Cut, which, is an all-female team. We have female leadership, and New York Magazine is a really amazing, inclusive organization. We're part of Vox now, who are also really put that at like the forefront of their mission. But that being said, I've worked at places in the past that paid a lot of lip service to being progressive, and then it felt like as a young woman you were really sidelined and not taken seriously. So that definitely exists within the industry for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to shout out Diva. Diva is She's been watching a lot of these, is very busy, but she says that she loves The Cut, especially tours of interesting apartments and homes. So hello, Diva. Thanks so much for being here with us. Yeah, so I wanted to name a couple of your articles because I found the titles to be super cool and just wanted to chat a little bit more about your work. So one of them is, "He was the last person I wanted to be stuck with. Social distancing is meant to protect the public, but it also supports one of the most obvious tactics for abusers to isolate partners from support. 5 people on being isolated with their exes. What happens when you break up with your partner right before a pandemic hits?" Find that hilarious. Another one that got me was, "Coronavirus, even the orgies are canceled. We are facing a long, dry spring." Wow. So when I read these titles, I have so many questions. Wanted to chat through for you, when you're writing a piece, what kind of jumps out? How do you sorry about that. How do you go through your assignments and find a voice that really cuts deep and is not just a surface?
Do you mean like in terms of my voice or in terms of the people that I interview?
I think your voice, because you have such an interesting way of writing, where when you kind of take these titles as face value, they're kind of like, oh, okay, like what is, like, even the orgies are canceled. There's something so much deeper than something that, you know, you think you're going to just read about sex, but that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think and it's been like a long process ever since I started writing, like to try and make my voice on the page sound like my voice in real life, and to make, you know, to be able to write the way that I think, which is like, you know, full of complexity and like sometimes not agreeing with myself, and, you know, being able to sort of express like nuance and gray areas and uncertainty on the page without it sounding wishy-washy. And I feel like, again, it's something I'm like still working on, but I'm grateful to be a platform like The Cut and like New York Magazine, which really like allows you to be a writer who thinks aloud on the page and like allows you to sort of revel in nuance. That's why I think so at home there.
Yeah. Do you feel like are you ever afraid to write something thinking maybe in a couple of months or in a couple of years I'll look back and be like, oh, why did I write that? Or why did I have that opinion? Just because we evolve so much as people?
When I was like a little bit earlier in my career, all the time. Because I also feel like that's a stage where you're just like taking on any assignment and like using any opportunity to write and report. And I definitely did things that I look back on that I'm like, whoa, I don't even remember feeling that way. But I think as I've gotten more experienced, I've like had the privilege of being able to be more selective about what I write about. And now I feel like I'm lucky in that if I write something, it's often something I really care about and really feel strongly about. And I think that's why, like, in recent years, I feel like I can look back on my work and be really proud of a lot of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's also true in terms of no matter what industry you're in, when you're more junior, you're kind of taking on anything as it comes to get your feet wet and to get that experience. But as you get older, you can also assess the risks and know your own voice and get to know who you are and what you stand for. And so you can just say, hey, this is who I am today. I'm going to take this on and with no regrets. And if I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, that was my opinion then, I've changed. At least you can still respect the person that you were with the information that you had at that time.
Totally. And I think like you have to accept that you are gonna make mistakes. Like the way internet publishing works is like early in my career, I was doing like 5 stories a day sometimes. And not everything is gonna be like something you want engraved on a plaque. Like,
yeah.
You know, I look back on stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I sound so dumb. But part of it is accepting that that's the nature of the job. And, you know, not everything is like a book or like a PhD thesis. Like
Yeah.
some things are just blogs and they go out into the universe and people get mad at you and then you move on.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. It's interesting too when I think about the lens that women have, and I guess I'm trying to think more as a corporate person. When I go into the office, and this was maybe a little bit when I was in management consulting, you're really like, it almost feels like a movie sometimes, where you're going into a room full of like 10 very senior people that are all like white men, and then you show up. Well, I show up and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm like the only young person, and I'm a minority, I'm a woman, and I will watch out for certain words. Like I'll try to not say I feel, I think, I'll try not to say the words I like, right? So all of these little things will. And also I'll watch for my tone of voice. I'll try to lower my tone of voice so that it's not this high-pitched, very girly type of pitch to be taken more seriously. And that takes such a toll mentally, where I need to focus on my job and deliver the same work that men can deliver easily without having to think about changing their personalities and their vocabulary. So for that kind of space, have you had to deal with similarities in that kind of space in publishing, just because your life is journalism, it's words, it's how you express yourself?
Well, I mean, again, I think I have kind of a unique experience because I work at The Cut, which is all women. Like we write for women, like our editors, our leaders are women, and it's kind of great because you can just go on some sort of like inane rant, or you can, our editorial meetings are just like full of people saying like what's on their mind and the thing that's been bugging them. And it's just this really like free creative space. And I think that's what makes a lot of our content like so fun and so interesting. But at the same time, I think every young woman has dealt with that. I mean, especially like earlier in my career, just feeling like I often felt like my ideas weren't taken seriously, or my pitches weren't taken seriously, because often they had like a sort of female lens on things. And I remember I would try to sound more like authoritative, or the way that I thought that like, just like the way that I thought, like if I was reviewing a movie, I would write like the way that I thought a movie review should sound. And I feel like with time I've learned like, people don't want to hear that. People want to hear like your real voice and your real perspective. And it's been kind of nice to let go of the need to be like, I'm an authority. It's like, no, you're not, and no one else really is either. So just, be who you are. Yeah.
I love that. No, you're not, and no one else is either.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Like, it's always these men in media who like write these long Twitter threads with like 48 like Twitter links, and you're like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I feel like women are much more uncertain. Like, I don't know, like this is just my opinion. Like, I'm sorry for expressing this opinion.
Yeah.
And you realize that the people who go out with like all this bluster and confidence, who are like usually white men, like rarely know what they're talking about.
Right.
Just have to, be like that.
Yeah. That's really good advice. A question of mine is, when it comes to this world that we live in right now, where blogs are so accessible, I mean, it's been, I want to say at least 20 years that like anyone can write a blog and can express themselves. But I think even now with more channels, we have Twitch, TikTok, Quibi, like there's just all these channels popping out, that everyone feels like they have something to say, and that's wonderful. I think it's really great, but at the same time, it kind of creates this separation between fact and opinion, as well as newsworthy content and just like word vomit, if you will. So what are your thoughts, given this is your field, this is a profession, something that you take very, very seriously, it's your craft. So when you think of people who are just like, oh, I'm going to go out on the internet, I'm just going to like start expressing myself, I'm going to write a blog. What are your immediate thoughts when you think of that?
I think, you know, people expressing themselves is great. I mean, I started out as a blogger, like a lot of my favorite writers started out, you know, blogging is sort of like, it doesn't mean what it used to mean, but, you know, I have so many friends who like just started writing and their voices were so funny and captivating, and that's how they found their way into the industry. And I think, you know, the internet is really great in that it has opened up a space where you can hear like from voices that wouldn't otherwise get a platform. Like anyone can go and tell their story, and that's how a lot of news is broken. At the same time, like one thing that definitely pisses me off is when celebrities interview other celebrities, like instead of having a reporter do it, because they just throw each other like the most softball questions, and it like they just like do it because they would prefer to like not really be properly interviewed.
Yeah,
that bothers me. And I do think that like in general, it's good to know the difference between like a site that has like real journalistic principles and one that doesn't. Like it can seem like some of our stories, like maybe it seems off, but actually like we have to fact check everything. We have like certain reportorial standards that we have to uphold, like different ethics. Like we, you know, really can't publish anything that we can't back up. And that is not true for like a lot of places. So I think it's important to like make the distinction between, you know, like what you're reading and where it comes from and who the source is, and just like be an informed reader.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It kind of reminds me, there was this article, sorry, not article, there was it's a new type of show on YouTube where celebrities will interview each other, and there was something off about it. I think it also gives other people, like celebrities, license to almost one-up each other, where they're just like trying to talk about themselves and like one-up each other's work versus having a journalistic lens to learn more about the stories that they're either acting in or singing about. So having a journalistic lens.
Yeah. There's certain celebrities that I'd be like stoked to hear just like riff with each other for a while. I just mean in terms of like, I feel like a lot of magazines, the jobs that used to go to reporters, like writing the cover story, and sometimes you get these really unique, unusual insights into people. Like a lot of those have been replaced with just like basically PR. And I think there's something lost there.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there a story that, or are there any stories or topics that you have wanted to write about that were maybe too controversial or got a controversial response when you published them?
I mean, certainly yes. I think like less than that, there's been stories that were just really hard. Like I did a story about Me Too on Wall Street, and that was writing about a case that had like ongoing litigation. It was a really complicated case, and you know, there was lots of points where I could have just been like, this is too much to wade into almost. But you know, it's kind of cool to be like, this is really tough and I'm going to stick with it anyway. I had the same experience. We did a story about women in the alt-right. Actually, a girl I went to high school with who like became like an alt-right, I don't know if we even use that term anymore, but like who became like a sort of far-right spokeswoman. And that was like really tough to do because this was someone I used to know, and I just felt it was like really important to sort of push through even when it got challenging.
That is incredible. Wow.
Yeah, that was a tough one. That one took a long time.
I'm getting chills. I live in financial district, so I just like, I'm here. Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna plug my phone Okay, my place is so messy. I have not slept in a long time because of work and
Yeah.
everything. So I'm like trying not to show what my place looks like because it's so gross.
Well, I'm at my neighbor's house actually, so that's why it's so clean. But she's not here. She's gone back to Canada, but I'm
Oh, nice. Okay.
using it as my little like pied-à-terre pandemic office. Yeah.
Okay, I think this works. Yay. I don't know if you saw like the pizza in the back, but
Oh, yum.
all right. So one of my final questions is, and this is something that I've been asking only recently, it's in terms of the change that you hope to see in the world, but from a female perspective. So whether that's how women treat each other, how you see women in certain industries, how they're treated, or just anything related to women in the world, and what change you would like to see there.
I guess one thing I would like to see is like, you know, sort of women remembering and everyone remembering what feminism is really about, and it being an inclusive movement, as opposed to what I've seen a lot of lately where it becomes like kind of a branding exercise. Like it's almost like, oh, like buy this t-shirt or buy this product and like you're feminist. And it's like, I think I'd like to see like less attention paid to like image and the way that, you know, like things, just like things being branded as like progressive when actually like their organization is really crappy to women, or things that like have this inspirational messaging when they actually don't have, you know, like socially responsible business practices. So I think that sort of like hypocrisy is something that I could like do without. I think we all could do without.
I've never even thought of that. I've thought about it in the sense of like sustainability, or even when we think about foods where everyone's like, oh, let's be conscious of the chemicals in foods. But then, you know, from a branding perspective, you think something's healthy, or you think that something is sustainable or recyclable, but it's not. And so it's almost like corporate greenwashing or that kind of branding. But from a feminist perspective, I've never thought of that. Can you maybe dig in a little bit deeper into what that means?
Yeah, I mean, my colleague Molly Fisher, who writes really great stuff, had a really good piece like right after Trump's election, and she was talking about the t-shirts that said "the future is female," and it was sort of about how like the sort of like capitalist like imagery of feminism had overtaken like the real struggle. So it was almost like people like didn't even remember what they were fighting for. They just sort of wanted to adopt it as an aesthetic. Like it's kind of like how feminism is trendy right now. Like it's trendy for companies to have ads that like, you know, make them seem inclusive. It's trendy to use that sort of feminist language, and that's great. But it doesn't mean anything when there's nothing behind it. Right. And I think companies have realized that they can sell stuff by like using a certain type of like feminist messaging. And that's all well and good if like your business practices back that up. And like if you actually are a company that like is inclusive and is socially responsible, I just think that it's an easy out for corporations to be like, we're feminist, and because look, we put out this like pink sparkly version of our product, and everyone's like, yeah.
So, no, absolutely. I get it.
Maybe a little bit like deep for Instagram Live.
No, this is like what the corporate diary is about. It's these existential questions that like we should be asking ourselves and talking about. I know that like our viewers talk about it all the time amongst themselves, and you know, when we're not working, like I don't know if this is what you guys do at the Cup, but like we'll sit in a room and just like talk about that on the phone, or whether, I don't know, like at least for myself, this is what I talk about on a daily basis.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I think writing about it so much and thinking about it so much, like, you also have a tendency to sort of get in the weeds with it. Like, I'm often have to be like jolted out of my internet bubble and be reminded that like the level of sort of minutia that we focus in on everything is not the same as like most people in the world. And it's like a helpful reminder to be sort of pricked out of your bubble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. I will ask you a last question. I just want to be mindful of your time. It would be, how do you think that your career, you being a woman has shaped your career?
I mean, I think it's shaped it in every way. I mean, again, to come back to just where I work, like, I feel really privileged to work somewhere that is like devoted to amplifying the voices of women. And I think from working at the Cut, there's a lot of stories that I never thought were stories before then. Like, I didn't think it really mattered like what me and my friends or my peers were thinking about and doing, and you realize that that's just because like women's perspectives have been so like undervalued. So yeah, I feel really lucky to be in a place that is like, and I think at the forefront of like digital publishing for women. But yeah, I mean, I think it's shaped it in every way. I don't know, because I've only ever been a woman, but I can imagine it would be different if I had been born a man.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, to your point about amplification, the fact that you're at the Cut, it's just such a great magazine or online publishing destination where people feel like their voices are being heard, and it's modern, it's witty, it's intelligent, it's light, but it could also be pretty deep. And so I think it gives a lot of women meaning to feel like their voices and stories are being told and understood. So thank you so much for your work.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for reading. Really appreciate it.
All right, Anna. Well, thank you so much for joining the Corporate Diary. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this on IGTV, and I'm trying to think, I may publish it on YouTube. I just kind of have to check out the specs so that once we publish it, it's, we're not like in the little tiny square. That's more technical, but yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for joining.
All right. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.